welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm going to make a video on these Athearn, I think they're Genesis cars. This is like the fifth one or sixth one that I've come across where there's a specific problem with the coupler box. So when you get these, they're beautiful cars, by the way. Really nice details. This one actually came weathered already. It's got some graffiti on the other side. It's really nice. And a lot of these cars I've either received as a gift or I've found kind of like on one of those group shopping places, you know, where people trade and stuff and buy used equipment. But a really nice car. But what I wanted to bring to your attention is that the couplers, first of all, the couplers are terrible. The couplers that come with these cars are plastic. They fall apart really easily and they bend. And they hate to couple to anything else. They uncouple all the time. So I've been slowly getting them switched out. Three of them, one of my friends did for me, so I'm not really sure what he did. I just kind of like gave him the cars and he figured it out somehow. But I found another way of doing it. I don't know if it's the same or different than his, but I want to show you that because you might have a situation like this. I mean, these are pretty popular cars. So you may have come across this situation before and you're frustrated and you want to use the car, but obviously the coupler is garbage. So I already did this side. I replaced the original coupler with this KD 148, which is what I like to use in my rolling stock because they're very reliable. And I usually cut the pins off, but I actually leave them on before I leave them on while I'm installing because it has a way of like you can grab this little pin and it makes it much easier to maneuver. So we're going to do this one together. Now, I made a video for this one and it completely fell apart. As far as the production, the equipment, everything was failing on me. The camera fell over. It was just ridiculous. So, and by the way, speaking of my camera, I apologize for this makeshift little tripod that I have here. It's not meant for this, but it's all I got. So, sorry about that. Anyways, the first thing you want to do here is take the trucks out. So you'll need a flathead for that. Not sure why such nice cars come with such large, clunky screws, but whatever. The trucks are nice. They have roller bearings, and they spin. So that's nice. Roller bearing caps, I should say. So put the truck aside. And what you're going to notice right away is that the coupler box is extremely narrow compared to a typical, like this is a typical Athearn box. Look how big that is compared to that. Now, I realize that they probably did that to be more prototypical, but it's not very functional. So if you're okay with that coupler, then great. But if you want to put a metal coupler in there and you want to use 148, I don't know if Katie makes anything for that size box. I don't think so. But anyways, this is what I use. So you can see right away that this is going to be very tight. And actually, I'll tell you what happens. It doesn't fit in there at all. Because the KD, the receiver hole here bulges out here on the sides. You can see how it comes out. So that's the point that it touches the box. And you can shove it in there, you can force it in, but then it won't pivot because you'll be rubbing up against the sides of the box, and it's not a good situation. So obviously you want to modify this. So here's what I do. First of all, you got to be very careful because there's little parts here. This is this rod here. This is metal. And there's a little hose here that's plastic. Those are the two things that typically break first when you're doing this. So try to go gently. And the other thing is that these little screws are extremely small. So you'll need a very, very small Phillips head. I try to use a magnetic Phillips head screwdriver so that once I pull the screws out, it stays on the screwdriver. And then I could grab it and put it somewhere safe. So obviously you're going to do both. And by the way, I'm just saying this in advance because I've already experienced it. I might have to do some of these things off camera because it's very hard to look at the screen while I'm working. You know, it's just the dexterity is not the same. So I might have to pull a car off camera. Okay, so once you do that, then, you know, a typical box just pops off. And you're going to notice that this coupler is going to just fall apart on you because it's garbage. But you can see the quality is just, I mean, you can literally bend it with very little effort. And so, throw those out. Okay, so this is one of the first problems that I had when I was first doing these. These like to get hung up a little bit when you're trying to get them out of the way. So what I do is, I don't know if you can see back here, the rod has like an L bend and then another little bend. So I just try to kind of like swing it out of the way. You got to be very careful not to get it stuck there, but that's basically now, you know, I can work with that. Okay, so now the goal is, and I'm going to put the KD coupler right on top of the box so you can see, is you want to get the coupler to be right there. Now you can see I can't even get it past the sides, even just by putting it there, right? So what I'm going to do is basically bore out. I'm going to make room for the sides of the coupler to be able to go past the coupler box. So you can see basically what I have to do is drill or get rid of the material just, you know, in the back, just back of the front of this pin. So basically from here back, I have to make a little room. You don't need to make a lot of room. I would probably just go like, you know, I don't know what that is in measurements, but about the size of the screwdriver, basically. So, you know, like this much. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. And so what I'm using is a Dremel, you know, at a very low speed. I'm just using like the first setting. So it's spinning about that fast. And I'm using a regular drill bit. Now, this is probably not a good thing to use because it's very wobbly when you're working with it. It's probably a better, tool to insert in here. But I couldn't find my Dremel box, so I'm just going with this. This is all I had in hand, and it's working anyway. So what I do is basically, like I said, I just go right to where that pin is, and I go just behind it, and I make one little hole. Right, and then just try to kind of break that top part off of the hole. Then I go right next to it and make one right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. I hope the noise isn't interrupting my voice, but you know, basically you do that, and then what I do is I flatten it out with the side of the drill bit. It takes a minute. And it's kind of important that you get that part flat. And just get rid of any sharp edges around the sides. So that's basically the modification. It's not a big deal. So you're creating that little hole there for the coupler to be able to dance through there. Okay, I'm just going to blow off the excess material there and then flip it over and do it again. This is the one that I might have to do off camera because I can't get the right angle as a righty to do that. So let me just go do that real quick. Okay, and like before, I tried to make it nice and flat. I'm gonna blow the material off. And of course, because I'm making this video, the cap came off. It's not a big deal. I'll show you how to get it back in there, but I'm gonna put that aside for now. It might actually be a good thing. Okay, so now here's the other part that gets a little bit difficult to work with, but once you do, the first time or a few times, you realize that it's not as bad as you think. So now that we have all that space there for the coupler to go on both sides, I want to show you something real quick. I'm going to put the coupler in there. I can find it. And I want you to notice that now it fits, it also pivots, but you see how loose it is within that pin, right? Because the hole for the coupler is much larger than what the pin that is provided is. So we need to make a spacer basically to fill up all that empty wiggle room. So here's what I've been doing. I'm gonna go to the righty version. Okay. I found this tube in my weird excess parts, like things that I've been just saving for years. It's basically just an evergreen piece of tubing, very long. So I'm glad I have a lot because I'm gonna need, to do this a few times. The only problem is that I lost the bag that it came in, so I have no idea what size this is. So unfortunately, I can't help you with that. If I find that, I'll definitely put it in the comments. But what I basically have to do now, because I realized that this actually fits perfectly on top of that pin, is that I have to basically cut a little disc or a little, I don't know what you would call it, but a little spacer basically. But you don't want it to be taller than that pin. So I've been just eyeballing it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be enough to get this Kadee coupler to kind of, lean up against. So I'm going to do that off camera because the last time I did it, it was a disaster. So, but basically, just so you know what I'm doing is I'm taking the X-Acto blade and I'm just eyeballing. And then what I do is I roll and I put a little pressure on the blade and it basically just snaps off. But don't cut it on an angle. Try to really cut it straight and try not to squash the tube so that it's nice and circular when you go to install it. So let me go ahead and cut that. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing this. I'm not doing any measurements or anything like that. Okay. Now, I'm not loving how this one came out, but I think it'll work. So hopefully I can hold this to the camera. You can see it there. So you see it's a little rough. I suppose you could sand it with a file. It's not necessary. In fact, you could just kind of with your nail, just kind of break off the excess material. Okay. So now what I've noticed is that, styrene is very forgiving, but you got to kind of help it along as well. So what I'm doing lately is I'm putting my X-Acto blade inside the hole here and then just kind of giving it a few spins without cutting your finger to get rid of some excess material. And I try to do it on both sides. I know this is not a very good demonstration because it's tiny, but basically like that. And not a lot of pressure. It's just enough to kind of shave off a little bit of that excess plastic. And now what happens when you put it on the pin is that it's not going to go in. It's going to fight you. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm trying to do this on camera, but not easy. So the idea is to just kind of get it into place, but not really push. Just kind of wiggle it on there, kind of like that. So it's not really on. But then you want to lift the car. You don't want to push into the wood because what's going to happen is, first of all, you're going to damage any grab irons over here or the walkways. But also you might crush this whole, housing here. So what I try to do is with my nail, just kind of flatten it out a little bit. And like I said, it's going to want to fight. So, go slow and kind of work it in slowly because, Styrene, like I said, is forgiving. It'll eventually wiggle itself in there. It'll start kind of widening and stretching. But don't be impatient and force it in, because I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I can see how this might completely collapse if you put too much pressure on there. So I'm just letting it dance. You know, and you might be able to find tubing that works better, but like I said, I've been doing it like this, and it's been working pretty well. Just got to kind of play with it a little bit. Okay, so it's already in now, and I'm just trying to kind of center it a little better. There we go. And by the way, if you can get one finger on top, that definitely helps, because now you can kind of push it all the way. All right, good. This is perfect. So now you're going to see that hopefully that the plastic is a little shorter than the pin. And like I said, it does not have to be exact, but you don't want it to go past that height. Otherwise, it's not going to allow for the box cover to fit there correctly. Now, let's test the coupler. I use the ones with the whiskers, the 148s. So you got to kind of wiggle the whiskers in there. But basically, it should fit pretty snug in there. And it's almost better that it fits a little tight. So you can see now, well, hopefully, now there's no real wiggle room anymore, right? And this is still working back and forth. And you can see the coupler is coming out the sides there, but very unnoticeable. Okay, so hopefully when I let go of this coupler, it won't fall down. Let's see. Oh, we got lucky. Sometimes it wiggles off. But now that I think of it, because we dropped this, I'm going to have to remove this for a sec. Because as you're playing with this thing, it's going to want to fly off anyway. So the hardest thing about this, getting this back in, is that this rod has like a 90 degree and then another little 90 degree right there. So you got to feed it in from the inside out. This way. There's a little tiny eye hook in there. And once you get it past the first 90, it should slide in just like that. All right. And then once you're in there, then you just got to get it to where the straight position is so that it just flops on top just like that. Okay. Now, we're going to try to, this is where it gets a little annoying, somehow get this coupler in there like we did before. Great. That actually worked out nicely. But now what I've noticed is that you need to still put spacers in there, because it will not, it'll want to wiggle up and down, meaning like vertically. And then you might get like the wrong height on the coupler according to the rest of the cars. So I've been using these because, again, it's all I had in hand. The 209s, and I need to use two of them for it to get the perfect height. Now that's where it gets a little annoying, because these things like to fling out of your hands. It's like whatever you want it to do, it's going to do the exact opposite. So we're going to try to do this on camera. Hopefully it won't fight me. And as you're doing this, you might lose the coupler. See, there it goes. So, it would be easier to have little tweezers or something around, but see what happens? Like you put one in, and then the other one wants to come out, and then it comes through here, and then you can't get this out. So then you have to fish it out, because we're making a video and this is going to be annoying, and that's what happens. So right now everything's going to want to fight me. That's just the way it goes. All right, so this looks promising now. Nothing fell out, so we're just going to quickly and carefully get that cap on there. Once you get the cap on there, then you're in business. All right, so we're going to hold the cap down. Sorry, you can see any of that. All right, so we got the cap on there with the spacers underneath. And now we need to find our little screws, which I put aside. And of course, because you have no hands left, you got to kind of feed it in sideways like this. And that's going to fight me too, because why not? Because we're making a video, and that's what happens. All right. So now it's in there. We're going to try to screw it in. You don't have to go super tight. You just want to get it so that everything doesn't fall apart on you. All right, and be careful because these little screws, you can strip them really easily. And now we're going to do the second one. And I just go until they basically just make contact. And then we're going to test this. And like as you can see, it's got very little up and down wiggle. Actually, I'm going to go a little tighter here. Yeah, which I think is good enough. And then it's still loose going left and right. Now, it's not going to work. Look, it's not going to work perfectly. But it's going to definitely fit in there. And you're going to be able to run these cars without any problems. The next thing I would do is probably cut the pin, but we're going to test them first. So let me get this truck back in. This video went a lot smoother than the last one. You don't even want to know what... I might even put the mishaps, or whatever you call it, the outtakes on this video. But we'll see. All right, so we should be in business. Now, what I'm going to do is basically rail it. Right, and then I'm going to take this car that I showed you before. This is kind of like any old standard car that I know has the couplers at the right height. And I'm going to couple and see what happens. So that's actually perfect. You can see the couplers are exactly at the same height. They're not going anywhere, right? And they uncouple perfectly. That's perfect. Okay, that I'm really happy with. Okay, so now that I know that works, the only thing I would do now is just cut those off. Just got to be very careful with the hoses when you cut those off. But that's basically it. So I hope that helps. I mean, like I said, I've come across a few of these cars already, and it's very frustrating because, you know, you want to just run the cars, and now you got to do all these modifications to them, and they're beautiful cars. So I hope this helps if you want to do it this way. Obviously, there's probably a million and one ways to do this. But this is my way. All right. Take care. Thanks for watching.